Concluding Passover. My name is Daniel Vallis from InformedChristians.com, a website ministry devoted to discerning current events from a Christian and biblical perspective. This is a warning, but it is not a prediction. I do not know the future, but I will show you what is going on right now and what is on our radar. Right now it is May 15th, and we are on the second day of Pentecost, the day for those outside of Israel. We're about halfway through it. So we're still at a very important time, and we talked about how there is a possibility for Pentecost to also be in a week, but there's a strong argument for this week too as well. Again, I do not know the future. I just know we are at a very important time, and there are so many shadows and patterns coming together right now, and the Lord is drawing our attention to this time that we must give it our full focus. We must be sober-minded. We must be vigilant and not get distracted during this time, because the Lord has brought our attention to this period for a reason. And it's not for our morbid curiosity or to fill our heads with all sorts of trivia. It's because He wants us to prepare ourselves, prepare our hearts, prepare our lives, because He is about to do something. And we will wait patiently as He concludes the tapestry of redemption that He has been weaving. And that started back at Passover. And that's why this video is called Concluding Passover, because Pentecost, the time of Pentecost, really finishes what was started at Passover. And remember, the countdown to Pentecost started right in the midst of the Passover time. So this is a completion, and it's tied to the harvest times as well, but it's tied to the patterns and shadows that we saw with Ruth and Rahab and all the other patterns and shadows. So Pentecost is finishing out the spring feast, but in a sense it's also finishing out the tapestry of redemption that has been woven throughout this entire time. And so we always have to keep that in mind. The fulfillment of prophecy is not just one or two individual pictures and patterns. No, especially now at the end times, the fulfillment of prophecy is going to be a tapestry of redemption, pulling together many shadows and patterns that God has been laying down over the years and through many different people's stories and examples. Now, going back to Pentecost, as I mentioned, we are on this second day of Pentecost, which is for those outside of Israel. Yesterday on the 14th was the proper Pentecost day for those in Israel, but it's also generally recognized that there is a second day for Pentecost, even though it isn't a known date. Once you figure out the countdown and get that right, and there's argument about that, we've covered that as well too. But there is a second day to Pentecost as well for those outside of Israel. But it still appears to be in effect. And today I was just thinking about and just doing a lot of meditation and reading and studying about Pentecost, because there's a lot to this wonderful story. And I was reminded of our passage that we looked at in Luke 17, and we covered that of the different references and inferences of how when Christ comes back, there's going to be people engaged in activities related to grain and harvesting. And we looked at verse 31, how he mentions somebody will be out in the field. In verse 35, 2 women will be grinding grains. In verse 36, 2 men will be out in the field again. Again, this multiple reference and inference of harvest and being involved with the grains. And I was thinking about this today. The pictures that are described in this passage, which are the majority, all of them, the people are involved in labor. Twice he mentions that people are out in the field. And this should ring some bells because Pentecost was a holy day. Servile labor is not allowed on Pentecost. But here we find a passage that Jesus Christ himself is telling his disciples that the majority of the examples will be people working when he comes back. So just by the examples he gives in this passage to make us scratch our head, make us realize, okay, he's not talking about Pentecost proper, but he does seem to be pointing to the pattern and shadow of it. And can he be referring to the second day, which is regarded more as a festival, especially there in Israel? It's hard to say. But he does seem to be given specific clues for specific reasons. And we find ourselves on the second day of Pentecost. And we find the conditions that he described. So again, I do not know what the future holds, but we are at a very important time. So we must continue to wait patiently and see what is unfolded in the days and hours ahead. Just yesterday on the 14th, Jupiter and Moon came together, and actually the Moon is going to be right at the edge of Leo tonight too as well. But it definitely caught my eye last night as I was watching it. Very poignant to the celestial signs and prophetic signs that we see right now as we are anticipating our Redeemer coming to pick up what he has redeemed. Especially with the pictures of the bride and coming at midnight, and even the pictures of Pentecost when the church age was started, and also the pictures of that was the same time when God made a covenant with Israel at Mount Sinai too as well. So it's not by accident that we see a celestial sign of the king and the feminine. The bride of Christ is what the moon is often pictured as, coming together right at this time. And last night I just grabbed out a patio chair and sat out in the field and just watched this beautiful sign in the heavens, reminding us of what is going on right now and how God is calling our attention to these shadows and patterns. And even with the celestial signs reminding us this is the time that He is drawing our attention to. And when we just look back at the past few weeks and months of everything that the Lord has been showing us with the celestial signs lined up with the biblical calendar that we've been looking at, it is amazing to see how God has called our attention to this time. And while we do not know what's going to happen or how it will unfold in the days and hours ahead, we must always keep in mind when we do not understand something, we must not throw our faith on that. We must rest our faith and our shield of faith on what we do know. And so this is why it's always good to review. What have we studied before? And this is why we have the posters and the booklets and all the information on our website where you can go check it out and be reminded of everything that the Lord has shown us. So when Satan tries to throw doubts that, oh, maybe this ain't going to happen after all, we can look at what God has already shown us and we can rest on that God is doing something amazing at this time that He has not done in the past few decades. And He's calling our attention to this time for a very special reason. And so we rest and have our faith in that, not in what we don't know. So we see what God has shown us already, we put our faith in that and rest in that, and we wait patiently for what He will do. And we've seen a lot of how we know we are at the proper time with the calendar. So I'm really not even going to bother spending time with that, especially how it lines up with the harvest. And even with the harvest being early, there's absolutely no way you can delay it by a month and have it line up with the harvest at all. It's amazing how many signs there are confirming that we are in the third month right now. And we even talked about how even Satan knows what time it is and how we are in the third month. And with some of the signs that even they were showing to their disciples. For example, on the total solar eclipse date, they put out the big announcement of Rapture just got nominated for BAFTA awards for video games. A game called Rapture, whose very emblem is a total solar eclipse coming out on the day of the solar eclipse. This was not accident. Satan knows there's going to be a rapture of the watching bride that is ready. Most of the church will not go, though, but he knows there is going to be a rapture. He knows there is going to be a falling away. And he keeps reminding his disciples, this is the only thing that's holding us up. As soon as this happens, then we will be unrestrained. So they released that right on the day because they are watching the celestial signs too. They're very aware of that. And we talked about how the video game Rapture was the #1 selling game in the PlayStation Store last September. This was a very popular game that they were getting out. And this wasn't a Christian game made for Christians. This is a secular video game with a lot of influence in it that is getting the message out to Satan's disciples, reminding them there is going to be this event before the Son of Perdition is revealed. And they're acclimating through conditioning Satan's disciples and the world in general as a whole to this concept that there is going to be a rapture. So when people see it, they're not running to the Bible right away to try and figure out what happened. They're thinking, wow, this is just like the video game, or this is just like the movie, or whatever. He's conditioning them to seek elsewhere and to be already acclimated to the events that are about to happen. And we also talked about how they made a point of emphasizing that their previous game, called Dear Esther, was considered to be Rapture's spiritual predecessor, which was very interesting. When we looked on the biblical calendar, Purim happened just 2 weeks before that. They know what time it is. And we talked about how at the triumphal entry, they made a big push with the Palm entry in Phoenix, and we covered all that already in the gateways there. Then we also talked about the last day of unleavened bread, how there's a call for assembly. That's when the Alice trailer came out about the ready bride who's awake. She would escape, the reference to Rahab pictures that they used there in the church at Trafalgar Square. And then they put out the messaging of the mayhem and Jacob's ladder right around the time of the Bethel picture in the study that we did on Joshua and the sun and moon. And then other pictures right at the same time with the Hennessy ad of ascending to the heavens. And we saw all of that. So we find ourselves at a very important time. Satan knows what time it is. He knows what time it is on the calendar. He knows what time it is prophetically. He knows what time it is celestially. And we've been studying those and looking at them. And we've also been keeping one eye on the enemy of what they're doing and how they're alerting their disciples and reminding them to stay alert. Because they know the gates are about to be opened and the Son of Perdition is about to be revealed. I came across this one short video the other day back from March 24th, right at the time of Passover of someone over in Israel, and they were just videoing the different barley fields and how they were ready for harvest right then. And that was just a unique additional confirmation that the biblical calendar we are following right now, with us being on the third month right now, is correct. It is completely in line with the harvest. And we find ourselves at Pentecost, and the enemy has been building up to this time. They don't know exactly when the Lord will come, the day or hour, but they know it's right around this time, and it appears that it is close to Pentecost, and we've talked a lot of the patterns and shadows with the different harvests as well. Satan is getting ready. They are ready. They are chomping at the bit because they know they're about to be unrestrained and they're going to be allowed to do a lot of destruction and shed a lot of blood, but they will be able to finally get rid of the old order and start on their new world order. And they know that the gates of hell, the powers of hell, the mystery of iniquity, and all of that is about to be unleashed. And they're reminding their disciples. And it was interesting, on Friday the 13th, one of the major airline tracker softwares, Flight Radar 24, one of the guys who works there tweeted out Flight 666 to hell, Helsinki, on Friday the 13th. And this was making its round on social media, and he was just really pointing it home on Friday the 13th, a Flight 666 to hell. Don't think that was accidental. But then on the same day, Bing also featured this picture for its main page, just like Google has a doodle for their thing. Bing has different pictures every now and then. But they featured this picture on Friday the 13th, which is a direct reference to Orcus, the god of the underworld, equivalent to Hades, and goes just in line with all the other direct references. Like I said before, almost every single day, the enemy making references to the gates of hell are about to open, and they know that. Every single day, we've been seeing messages, and there's a lot of other things, just links that people send me. I could talk all day on the different things and messaging that are going on right now. But I don't want to talk and have nothing to say. I want to share with you information that will help you get ready and have a biblical perspective of the time we are at now. The enemy is very busy. They know what time it is, and we must not forget that. The celestial signs have called our attention. The prophetic signs are calling our attention, and even the enemy is busy, and we must not be ignorant of that. Now, several weeks ago, we had talked about the Hennessy ad, What's Your Wild Rabbit, and the tie-in with Alice Through the Looking Glass, which just came out a couple days ago in London. And they're getting people ready, and they're acclimating that. And they're also using it in the general audience, the general world sense, to get them acclimated to the different events that will happen when time is changed. But then several days ago, another alcohol ad came out from Grey Goose Vodka. And you can find a link in the description box to the trailer, but we're just going to hit some highlights. It shows a group of people waiting and getting together and driving down the road, going to some special date. And they drive through a wheat field in France, of all places. We've seen a lot of attention drawn to France. But they are definitely driving through a wheat field. And this is where they come and park their car. And they see right off to the side a gigantic blimp with the flag of France on it, the red and blue. And they're running through the field to catch up to the blimp, because the blimp has already started to leave, and they're yelling at it not to leave, to wait for them. And they're cutting it pretty close on getting there in time. A very interesting allusion to what I've been covering lately with the wheat harvest and the barley harvest too as well. Here they have a blimp in the process of leaving, and these people are just barely making it. And they make an emphasis on the ladder. Again, we've looked at the Stairway to Heaven references that even the enemy has made, and the shadow pattern of the Jacob's ladder as well as Bethel. So they're tying all this together with the idea of ascension too as well. And they show a shot inside the gondola. And over there on the right, you can see a pyramid-shaped clock, which I thought was very reminiscent of the Eye of Horus on the dollar bill, and also reminding Satan's disciples of what time it is. Now, this does appear in one of the earlier trailers. They released 3 different versions of it. This one appeared in the second version of it, not the final cut, but it is still there. But alluding to the time, and they know what time it is, that the mystery of iniquity is about to be unrestrained. And they have their own concept of ascension too as well, and their concept of evolution, taking it to the next level, their version of purple. We've covered that too as well. But definitely another alcohol ad spirit related to ascending to the heavens above the cloud. And they spent a good amount of money on this, you can tell. And they show them going to a valley and stopping by a cinema and picking up a projector. And the tower there is very suggestive of the Tower of Babel. Also has a tri-pyramid at the top, kind of reminiscent of the Giza pyramids as well. But they show someone coming out with film reels, which reminded me of the 100-year film that we talked about before with the shadowy Apollo figure coming out through the doorway as well. And they're bringing all this stuff into play in this video. Then they show them stopping at a lighthouse, getting enlightenment, and the enemy has used the lighthouse as several different references as part of going to the next dimension, going to a higher level. They used it in the popular video game BioShock to go to Columba, and also where the world rapture is in that video game too as well, very blatant. But then it also appears in the Disney movie Tomorrowland, which uses the same chair from the game BioShock and very closely tied. We don't have time to cover it here. But they're getting a light bulb. They're getting enlightenment. They're getting light. The light bearer. He is the light bearer. And they stop off at a mountain. They're ascending to the sides of the north. It could be taken as. And again, using another ladder to get some ice. And it's very interesting because I show a different ladder than the metal ladder that supposedly the blimp has, drawing attention to the ladder again. They know there's going to be a Jacob ladder type. There's going to be a highway. There's going to be a dimensional way to another realm. In connection with the ascension to heaven, in connection with the wheat fields. The theme of that, all about ascending to the heavens. And they make a big deal about the projector and getting the projector ready and releasing the spirits, working on the illumination, getting the projector going, and projecting it onto the clouds, which was very reminiscent of the Project Bluebeam and that technology of how that will be involved in the end times deception. There's going to be a lot of technology of projections that will be used to deceive the masses of what is going on. So definitely they played that up real big in here. And then it's all by the Grey Goose Company, the world's best tasting vodka. And the theme of this trailer was Fly Beyond, which is very similar to the motto that is closely associated with the Pillars of Hercules, which had the warning of nothing farther beyond on them. And supposedly in the mythology and Plato's accounts, Atlantis was through the two pillars, and we've talked about that before. But the motto, nothing farther beyond, was inscribed supposedly on those pillars, and here this trailer with very suspicious connotations and patterns and pictures has the same association of fly beyond, go further. And that's the same association that is seen in the Tomorrowland film that Disney put out. That's even the plus ultra motto that they have in it, go beyond. And we talk about that in our article, Time in Tomorrowland, link in the description box. And we've talked about other themes too as well. But it's very suspicious that right here at the time of Pentecost and around this time leading up to it, they released this trailer heavily about ascending to the heavens in connection with a wheat field. And we know this is specifically a wheat field because the Grey Goose, they prominently feature that they are made with the finest French wheat. So this trailer came out on the 9th, although they did have an earlier version and a later version right around that time. But right around May 9th, that's when that came out. And the Hennessy ad just came out a few weeks ago. We talked about that. That's a cognac. It comes from Cognac, France. And it was all about ascending to the heavens, and we talked about that before. It's very reminiscent sphere as to the Alice in Wonderland, going above the heavens theme with the Jacob's Ladder, the Golden Gate, and space. We talked about all this, and then they even show the waters above the heavens, a reference again to the biblical account of creation, but also water as time. And traveling with the Ezekiel's wheel over that and through that, and they depict that heavily. And then depicting going to another dimension, going beyond the present and punching through the time barrier, the dimensional barrier. And they also emphasize that with their newest special edition, Hennessy 8, Time is 8. But even if you go to the Hennessy website, right on the main page, they emphasize the waters above the heavens theme. This is right on their main page. And ascending to the heavens. And when we go back to the Grey Goose, the world's best tasting vodka, supposedly. But if you look down in the little text there at the bottom, distilled from French wheat. And so that's why they had the emphasis on the wheat fields. When you look on their website, they talk about how each batch of Grey Goose vodka begins with soft winter wheat grown on farms in and around the fertile Picardy region of northern France. And then jumping down, after the wheat grain is fermented and distilled into a high-proof spirit, it travels south to wherever in the Cognac region of France, the same region that the Hennessy is produced as well. So we have a Hennessy ad coming out on the 15th, a Grey Goose coming out on the 9th, Both of them have almost the identical same theme, and both of them are made in the same exact region of France. Do you think this is a coincidence? No. Now it's interesting, one of the musicians that is depicted in the trailer is playing a theremin, and Google actually had a doodle about this back on March 9th. You may remember this. I had never even heard of a theremin until they put out their Google Doodle, and it caught my attention because I had never heard of it, but because I was wondering what in the world does this have to do with what they just put out. Because they released this on March 9th, which was the same time that they released the announcement about the Rapture game, tying a well-known venue, Google Doodle, with a theremin to the idea of rapture and the total solar eclipse, so that later on in a couple weeks when you saw a theremin again, you would be reminded, oh yeah, I saw that back when they made the big push for rapture at the BAFTA Awards, which we talked about the link to Apollyon with that too as well. But that is when they were making the big push and talk about it. Now going back to the Hennessy ad for a moment, they showed and depicted punching through the time barrier, so to speak, with their patterns that they used and even the Alice through the looking glass. And it reminded me of the dimensional jump that is shown in the Disney Tomorrowland film, where they punch through another dimension and they travel to Tomorrowland. Used almost the exact same picture. Which also reminded me that one of the big themes of Tomorrowland was the wheat field. They were laying down conditioning months ago to Satan's disciples that their Tomorrowland, their new world order, is in connection with the wheat harvest. We talked about Thoth already. Again, they are pushing the wheat connection in Time in Tomorrowland and the Grey Goose commercial because they know they're all connected to their Novus Ordo Seclorum. It's all part of the timing for that. And we talked about the International Mother Earth Day that the UN made a big announcement of. They also know the purple rain is connected to a harvest. And they know it will come onto the scene at the time of the wheat harvest. And that's where we are right now. And even on the jacket of the main character in Tomorrowland is a gigantic spiral. Her whole shirt is a spiral, which reminds us of the dimensional spirals at CERN and Vatican that we've talked about and featured very prominently in the latest Inferno. Because they know they're all connected. The gates of opening the bottomless pit and the son of perdition being revealed, it's all connected to all this. They know there is a spiral to time. They also know the scroll that is written on two sides, as described in the book of Revelation, is in a spiral as well. And they know the events of the tribulation are going to happen in a spiral fashion. So definitely check out our poster Revelation Spiral of Time as well as our videos on the subject as well. Once you understand the time component, the book of Revelation makes a lot more sense. If you haven't, also check out our video Time, CERN, and the Bible, as well as our articles Time and Tomorrowland, Time and Back to the Future. Link in the description box. Again, we are at a very important time related to the harvest, Pentecost. I do not know what will happen in the future, in the days and hours ahead, but I know it's going to be very interesting as the Lord is wrapping up the tapestry of redemption that started back on the triumphal entry and at Passover and is now concluding. We are at or near the conclusion of the spring feasts. There is still the option B, but our attention has definitely been drawn to this time for a reason. So definitely review the material that we have available. Build your shield of faith. Encourage yourself that the Lord has called our attention to this time for a reason. The enemy knows it's very important too as well. We can go outside and see the celestial signs that this time is very important. So we must stay focused. We must stay vigilant. And we must make sure we are ready. And I highly suggest that you read the book of Ruth. And that is typically what is done during the time of Pentecost, is reading the book of Ruth. And it's a beautiful picture of redemption. And it should remind us of how we are redeemed. You know, Ruth, she came to Boaz. She had nothing to offer him, but she asked him to redeem her. And likewise, we must come to Jesus Christ and ask him to redeem us, to pay for our sins. And this Pentecost time is a reminder that our Redeemer has gone to redeem us. Just like Boaz, the very next morning, he went to take care of what was going to be necessary to redeem her and take care of the legal matters, and then he was coming back. And likewise, we are waiting for our Redeemer to return. Hebrews 9:28. So Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. We are looking for our Redeemer. We are looking for the day of redemption when he will pick up what he has already redeemed. Let him find us watching and looking for him, our beloved, our Redeemer. And while we look for him, we will patiently wait on the Lord and make ourselves ready. Serve Christ first and highest above all else. Maranatha.